Train by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night, all day.
Now, you developed a really unusual fighting style. I mean, I think I've said about you that one of the more unusual things about your style is that I could watch you like as a silhouette. Someone could show me a silhouette of you moving around. I go, oh, that's Dominick Cruz. There's very few people that you would say that about, like where you would instantaneously recognize their movements. Like your movements are very unusual, very difficult to pattern, and they're not really indicative of like a style. Like, you know, there's the Muay Thai style, people have that light front leg. There's the karate style, like, you know, Wonderboy Thompson. There's a bunch of styles where you go, oh, I see what this guy's doing. Your style is very uniquely yours. What sort of caused that? Where'd that come from?
It's a mixture of things. I've been fighting since as long as the Diaz brothers. I started when I was 19 years old back in 2005, and I've been doing it since then. So that's part of it, is that just years and years of fighting and facing different people and seeing what the issues were. But more than that, it was built around the fact that I knew whether I like knew I was ahead or not, my mindset said I have to fight, do something different, because this is a new sport with new rules and new different equipment than's ever been seen in the history of this world. So that means there's 4-ounce gloves. We're using kicks, knees, elbows, and hands, everything, right? All eight limbs.
Mm-hmm.
So I said I need to make sure that I'm not taking damage. As long as I'm not taking damage, I should win. I got to be hard to hit, and my defense needs to be flawless with these size gloves. It's not going to be the same as boxing. I can't just sit here and cover like this because my gloves are a quarter the size. Things peek in, and I learned that real quick. And so I said, all right, so I need to move nonstop. I can't sit still like I do in boxing or kickboxing because you're going to get taken down as well. So that's where my mind started changing, is with the takedown. That's where I knew I really had to do something different. Is in no striking sport on earth is there a takedown involved. So that means that I need to attack on a different plane. And that means I need to not be down the center line. As long as I fight not down the center line, it takes away, as long as I don't fight on the center line all the time, it takes away almost all weapons from all styles. Boxing is probably the one style that flows most off the center line. But when we're talking about Muay Thai, or we're talking about wrestling, or we're talking about judo, or we're talking about almost every other martial art, they attack down a straight line. And so I knew I could take away most of their weapons just by changing the plane that I fought on. If I fought on a different plane than them, then they would not have answers for the plane that I'm fighting on, because everything they do is on that line. So instead of fighting them in their style, I fought the lines that they're fighting on. And then that kind of changed things mixed with the defense.
Well, I've always enjoyed watching you fight, and I've always enjoyed explaining how you fight to people that have never seen martial arts or don't understand it. Because for people on the outside, maybe someone who's not a fan or never did any martial arts training, they look at it like just violence. You know, They see guys just beating the shit out of each other. And the way I try to describe it to a friend once, I said, think about it this way. It's a lot like a conversation. And the more words you have at your disposal, the more verbal memory you have, the more used to stringing together sentences you are, the more fluently the conversation is going to come out of your mouth, the more it's going to flow.
Right.
And when you're watching, and I'll show someone like you, when you're trying to have, you know, let's call it a conversation, you're trying to have a conversation with Dominick Cruz inside the octagon, you don't know where the fuck he's going. Like you're setting up so many weird angles and so much weird movements, so many false entries, and there's so much going on that you're, in a lot of ways, you're overloading a person's reactions.
Yeah.
You're overloading their mind.
Well, that is partially what I'm trying to do. Yes, I'd agree. Now, you're starting to see that over time, there's an answer for every style. Mm-hmm. There's an answer for everything.
Yeah.
And that's the fun of this thing, is that it's not always stagnant. It's not always the same. And there is an answer to everything. And then you got to adjust.
Right.
So that's what I'm built on, is adjustments. My whole game is built on adjustments. So it can always change and always look different, because every round I can come out with a different adjustment off of what you did to me. And now you're fighting a different guy every round. You just don't know it. But that comes from fakes and seeing what they want on you. And that comes from their game plan. It's a whole mixture of reads in there, and that's something that you either have or you don't have. You know, somebody like Anderson Silva can make reads extremely quickly,
Right.
and that's what's made him so successful. Demetrius Johnson reads extremely quickly, makes him successful. The best in the world adjust, and for me, the best in the world aren't the ones who just win. It's the ones who win and stay on top for a long period of time.
Right.
Because now you don't just have a style to win a fight, you have a style to stay winning, which means that your style hits so many different avenues that you can compete with all these different styles no matter what they match you up against. Until now, my style, I built it so that no matter which style you try to throw at me, it was going to give it a problem. And that was the basis that I wanted to create when I fought. Every single time I fought somebody, it doesn't matter what your gift is, the planes that I'm going to fight you on make it impossible for your gifts to be your gifts anymore.
Now, I've seen you practice, and I've seen your footwork drills, and I've seen, you know, a lot of your steps and the different various entries you have to techniques. Are these moves that you've learned from somewhere? Have you acquired them from other martial arts? Have you sort of adjusted them and adapted them, or did you figure them out your own?
It's been a mixture. Working with Eric Del Fierro was a huge step because I had a lot of natural...
He's one of the best coaches in the sport and one of the most underappreciated guys because he doesn't blow his own horn.
That's why I love him. I like the coaches that don't need the pats on the back for themselves.
Right.
They're about the athlete. Eric is about every athlete he's ever coached. He's not about himself.
He's a great corner man, too. When he starts talking in the corner, he's outstanding.
He knows what he's doing. He's been in this sport 20-plus years, and the bigger thing that Eric doesn't get credit for is his understanding of the psychology that goes into preparing somebody to win a fight. You could have all the tools around that person. They could be the best human being on earth. But if their mind is not pieced together and the psychological pieces are not there, you're not going to be able to trigger them and get them in the fight when you need to. Jeremy Stevens is a great example of somebody like that. Sometimes you got to get crazy with that dude in the corner and even slap him around a little bit maybe, and he just goes and he'll kill somebody. It's like there's a psychological thing about certain athletes that you have to be able to touch on. Same with Greg Jackson is another guy who can do that. And that's what makes a good coach on that night, a good cornerman on that night. Not just what you did for 8 weeks, holding pads and patting the guy in the back and wiping the sweat off their shoulders and doing interviews and looking famous with them. What are you doing to make sure this person wins on that night? Not what are you doing to make sure you look good in this person's corner while he wins.
Right.
And that's something that I've run into a lot with people, is people a lot want to associate themselves with you when you're winning and not actually be there for you, but be there so they look good in your corner while you win. And those are the people you got to cut out. Those are the yes men. And those are the ones you got to be careful with. Eric is the opposite of that. And he's somebody, that's why I stick with him. He's somebody I can trust. He understands my psychology. He understands the emotional roller coaster of outside life.
A lot. And he's very effective with it.
And that will always be my argument with every conventional coach. And this is why. I break what makes them relevant.
Well, it's not necessarily you break what makes them relevant. You figure out a way to make your style work in a way that confounds the experts.
Well, what I mean by that is when they talk to me. So
Right.
maybe not to 20 million other people, they are the shit.
Right.
But when you try to tell me that, and I can't tell you how many countless world champion kickboxing coaches go, only you can do that. You're awesome. Keep doing it. And I couldn't disagree more.
Well, anybody can do it if they mimic your movements, and your movements aren't like Cirque du Soleil movements that you have to be physically gifted in order to pull off or work towards them for 100 years.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and break it down, but there are obviously movements that I'm doing, and they can be read. And it took 30 rounds to figure out with the same camp for 10 years, but they figured it out.
Right.
Well,
they can imitate you. You ever see Justin Buchholz do?
Yeah,
he does you pretty well.
They know what they're doing, but with. Who else has fought somebody as much as they've fought me? I mean, think about it. Benavidez twice, Faber twice, TJ Dillashaw, Charlie Valencia has fought with them. Scott Jorgensen trained with them before I fought him. Ian McCall trained with them for a tiny bit of time before I fought him. Essentially, every single person I've ever fought for the past 10 years has at some point been friends with Faber, trained with that camp because they were the little guy camp. While I said, why join him if you can beat him? And I just did it my own way and let them all hate me and train together. And it was okay with me. I needed to do things my way in order to build something different in a game that hadn't really caught up to the things that I was thinking about yet, in my opinion. It didn't make me the only one that was right in these things. It's just how I used the things that I used. They had theirs too. But my whole mindset was, like I said, if I fight like them, I'm going to be like them, and they're going to adjust to me like they adjust to everybody else.
Now, going back to the early days when you sort of learned the style, we kind of got off this, but I really wanted to touch back on it. When you said that your style, no one had your style before, no one could tell you that it, was the wrong way to do it because you were being very effective with it. But did you take it from anywhere? Did you look at boxing footage? Did you look at kickboxing or Muay Thai? Like, where did you get all your footwork from?
Well, there's a mixture of things. One, it all started with me fighting at 155 pounds, weighing 142 pounds. That's where this whole mindset started. So it was, they're already twice as big as you, and on fight day, they're going to be 3 times as big as you. So you better not get touched, you better not get grabbed, and you better not get hit at all. Don't let them touch you because they're too big. If they take you down, your energy is going to be zapped by the time you do get up, if you get up. And if they hit you, they're big and strong, and they're probably going to put you out. So you have to use all that strength, all that size against them and make it their weakness instead of their strength. And that's how I started because I was so little that I said, all right, I need to focus on defense. Obviously, I got to hurt them too, but after they do what they're trying to do with their big strength and be stronger and be more powerful and be more athletic, they're going to wear themselves out. And then now we're even middle of round 2. All those things that they had early, we're even now. And now I can just outthink them and pick them apart and beat them. And I always had that mentality rather than fight fire with fire. It just didn't make sense to me when my body was on the line. I wanted the path of least resistance. And so it started with that until I got to about 5-0, fought in total combat. I took that fight on 2 days' notice, went out there with no coaches, no cornermen, and went by myself, and they just picked random cornermen and put them out there. That night was why Eric liked me, because he saw, I took it at short notice, won it. It was a tough fight, but I had no cornermen. I came solo on a flight and just went. And so he's like, okay, I can work with this. This guy wants to do it. So he picked me up, but then that's really when the progression started, meeting Eric. And that's because I had pelts held for me here and there in Tucson, but only if guys were getting $65 to do it or something for it, because there's not a lot of money in fight game. So they're all as hungry as I am, the trainers. And I wasn't really like some star pupil that everybody wanted to get on board and make a world champion at this point. I was just a guy.
Right.
So I wasn't getting pad work. I wasn't getting one-on-one training. I lined up my own coaching. I'd have guys that knew what they were doing, being pro boxers, pro high-level wrestlers, high-level blue belts at this time, and roll and wrestle and make my own team and my own coaches with the people that I had available, but I didn't have a head. And when I found Eric at 6-0, I won that fight, found Eric, and he said, I'll coach you, I'll get you a manager, and I'll get all this figured out for you. That's what I was really looking for. That's why I went to California and got out of Tucson, because I knew I wasn't finding that in Tucson. When I went there and got that, it was like a gift. I was like, this is what I'm talking about. I knew if I went there and won with no one in my corner, somebody would want to pick me up. And they did. Eric did. And we've stayed together ever since.
So was your style something that you worked on with Eric, like learning the footwork drills? Like when you came to him, you essentially were a smaller guy who was fighting bigger guys and had to be a little trickier in your movement. Where were you getting that stuff from?
Well, now when I meet Eric, I'm no longer the smaller guy fighting bigger guys because, well, a little bit, but 45 is now allowed. Now 145 pounds is just getting into these small shows, not just the WEC. So by the time I meet Eric at 6-0, I take that fight on 2 days' notice at 145 pounds. But I was getting ready to fight at 155 in Colorado for a world title. But the whole show got canceled. That's why I was in shape to take the fight on 2 days' notice. So when I met Eric, the 45-pound weight class was there. 55 was the one that was basking. So that was how I got into the UFC. But your question exactly was what?
Was how did you devise your movement? How did you devise your footwork? Did you study other stuff? Did you learn it with Eric? Did you guys put it together?
Honestly, like I had a couple things that I did naturally, and then Eric has a skill set where if you have a natural movement, he doesn't tell you to fix it. He lets you do it and then turns it in, has you add a weapon to it. That's his gift. And I had a lot of those little weird, odd things that I did.
And those weird, odd things you had just devised to learn how to get away from bigger people.
Yeah, and it was a mixture of wrestling stance with punching and kicking. I kind of have a... If you watch wrestling, there's no set stance. There's no set... You know what I mean? It's constant. If you watch college, high school, like the highest level wrestlers, it's all fluent motion in both stances. So I made fighting that because I started out wrestling, and then I added the punches and the kicks to that motion. Instead of trying to change what I already did with my wrestling and try to make it this way, he just let me do what I did up to 5-0 with my wrestling and whatever I taught myself, and then he just tightened it up and made it into a pro level look to an extent. Speed, timing, range, these type of things.
And now, do you have it now as a system? Do you have it organized? Do you have it written down?
No, I have a system, but I'm a visual learner, so you could literally just do a movement in front of me and I'll learn it really quick. But if you write it or I have to read it, I'll never get it. I'm all visual. So there's certain things that I was running into when I would spar early on starting that I came up with habits to deal with because of my wrestling and not having a coach, that instead of the coach saying, no, do this, I just adjusted and found my own answers.
And do you keep a training log of all these lessons that you learned?
No, I know them.
They're just all in your mind?
Yeah, I know them. I know them very well. I've studied it.
100% confident that you'll keep that stuff in your memory? You don't need to write it down?
No, I don't need to write it down because I drill it.
Right.
And once I have a memory, I don't just write it. I do it. I drill it. Pad work, I'll show Eric, and I'll say, what do you think about this? And he'll be like, okay, well, I do this, this, and this to make it a little better and keep you da-da-da-da. And we go, okay. And then we use it. But, I mean, I'm not using the craziest moves in the world. You know, John Jones used crazy moves. Certain people like Stephen Thompson has crazy moves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm actually using crazy movements to stay defensive and offensive simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
That's the idea, to do both at the same time.
And to be very hard to read.
Well, you're hard to read if you're being offensive and defensive at the same time. Yeah, it's hard to read because you don't know if I'm being offensive or defensive. It's one or the other or both. I can do both because where I put myself, I'm defensively generally speaking, when I've been doing very well in my matchups, I put myself in the gray area where even if you do hit me, it's limited power, and I'm still able to hit you more than you're able to hit me. Basically, that's the idea.
Now,
generally.